A very good morning and welcome all of you to the daily news analysis for 22nd of February 2025. Before we begin, I ask you a question. Are we a soft state? This was the question asked by UPSC in the essay paper in 2009. This type of question keeps on appearing in GS Mains paper 2, GS Mains paper 3, PSIR optional also. Well, today, in today's news analysis, I'll give you a perfect example of what do we mean by a soft state. It cannot be best example than this one. When a country's election process is meddled by a third country, even if it is a superpower like America or Russia or China for that matter, so you can say that we are a soft state. Okay, soft state is a state which is easily targeted by these type of instances. So that is why UPSC very particularly asks these type of questions. That is why I have written this question on the screen itself. A state which is too soft a target to be affected by the actions of the other countries. Amnesty International, Greenpeace, these type of NGOs, American NGOs, are used as a tool by the US aid to meddle into the India's electoral affairs. Even as we debate about the appointment of Chief Election Commissioner and Election Commissioner members by the selection panel, here's another larger phenomena that US now is meddling into the Indian elections as if China was not enough. More on this when we'll talk about this in the detailed manner. Another important issue is going to be who is going to bell the cat. This time the cat is the judges themselves. Well, judges, the judiciary has been regulating, has been supervising everything happening under the Indian polity. But when it comes to taking care of the accountability of the judges, judges are not allowing any other authority. Yesterday we dealt with this dimension briefly. Today a full-fledged editorial has appeared. So we are going to see more in this editorial. What does the Prevention of Corruption Act say on this issue? Okay, Prevention of Corruption Act 1988 as revised from time to time. It's section 2. What is the definition of a public servant? All these things we are going to talk about in this editorial today. Another editorial on cooperative federalism. So these two editorials we are going to analyze today. Judge's dilemma, even though the text is hazy, but I'm explaining it to you. This is the judge's dilemma. This editorial we are going to see this sudden discomfort with the UGC guidelines. UGC guidelines, they say that now the governors acting as the chancellors of universities will head a selection panel which will appoint the vice chancellors. Okay. So we talk about cooperative federalism, but here is the perfect example of center trying to intrude into the arena of the state governments, into the preserve of the state governments through delegated legislation. Don't worry, I will explain what is the meaning of delegated legislation also. Just stay tuned. Too many terminologies, too much of analysis in today's news analysis is waiting for you. I mean, what do we mean by RBI's currency swap? This is another news article. RBI to infuse liquidity via $10 billion US dollar Indian rupee swap. Currency swap we have seen in the light of India helping Sri Lanka. Now RBI helping itself so as to tame, so as to arrest the further decline in the value of rupee. These are the news articles, major news articles that we are going to see. Then India-Qatar. We saw that Qatar and India have entered into a strategic partnership arrangement. But why so? Why is India in a haste to engage as many Gulf countries as possible? Because of the China factor. As if China factor was not enough in the India's neighborhood in the form of string of pearls theory. Now China factor is coming to haunt us in the West Asia, a region otherwise important for both the countries insofar as oil and natural gas supplies, the energy supplies of both the countries are concerned. This editorial has appeared with regard to the LNG dependence of India on Qatar, which is around 6%. We are importing 6% of our LNG supply from Qatar. We want to increase it to 15% by 2030. So that is why Qatar is important in India's scheme of things. So we are going to see more on this today. So let's get started without much ado. So see here, a search cum selection committee will comprise nominees for the chancellor, nominees of the chancellor, that is governor. So you must be knowing that in the universities, the chancellor is the governor, okay, in the state universities, and in the central universities, the chancellor is the president. So now the chancellor is going to get more say in the state of affairs in the state universities. Now, chancellor will head a panel, search cum selection panel or committees headed by the governor, who happens to be the chancellor, then the UGC president, UGC chairperson, and then the university syndicate. University syndicate is also packed with the politicians or people who donate, who are the trustees of the university in one capacity or the other. They will head a panel, they will comprise this panel who will appoint the vice chancellor. Okay, so state governments are not happy with this because under the UGC guidelines, this is happening. University Grants Commission. What do we mean by grants here? University Grants Commission, in order to help the phenomena of grants, in order to help the phenomena of research in the universities, University Grants Commission gives some grants to the state universities, and states over a period have become dependent on these grants. Now, in return for these grants, the central body UGC, through its rules, is intruding into the affairs of the state universities by prescribing this type of a criteria for appointment of vice chancellors of the state universities. Remember, state universities are those universities which are predominantly financed by the state governments, and they are created by the acts of the state governments. Then why, through delegated legislation, through the rules, is the UGC trying to interfere in the academic arena? Okay, so earlier also we have seen that under the various educational programs of the central government, the flagship programs, the financial aid is not being released for some of the states like Tamil Nadu if they do not implement the provisions of 3-language formula as required under national education policy. Okay, so where is cooperative federalism? It seems to be coercive federalism. You understand the difference between cooperative federalism, where the center and the state, they mutually cooperate, whereas coercive federalism is, if you do not do this, you will get something in reward, something in return, withdrawal of funding or these rules and regulations or something or the other, right? You will get a punishment in return. This is what the states are being told through these type of guidelines. More on this in the news article. First of all, coming to this news article, the Lokpal's ruling. So what is the issue so far? So as to save time, I have incorporated a little bit of information already. What is happening is, the Lokpal in 2 of the different orders, confusing orders, in January 3 order, the Lokpal said that January 2nd order rather, the Supreme Court judges are not under its jurisdiction, not under the jurisdiction of the Lokpal. Okay. But on the 27th January order, okay, the 27th January order, it says that High Court judges are, 27 January, High Court judges are under the jurisdiction of the Lokpal, under Lokpal's jurisdiction, right? Why such a confusion? Even as both of them are the constitutional authorities, right? Even as both these judges are constitutional authorities. High Court judges are appointed under Article 124, okay, and Supreme Court judges are appointed under Article 124. High Court judges are appointed under Article 217. High Courts are created under Article 214. Right? Lokpal says that High Courts are not the constitutional authorities. They are rather statutory authorities. Why such a distinction by the Lokpal? What difference will happen if High Courts are statutory authorities? That means they are created merely by an act of the Parliament. If that is the distinction, why that distinction is being given by the Lokpal? Because Lokpal's jurisdiction extends to only the statutory bodies and not the constitutional bodies. Okay, so see here, there is a complete snapshot of Section 2H of Prevention of Corruption Act 1988. So you see here, any person in the service or pay of the corporation. I suppose the text is fairly visible because when we convert the PPT into PDF, the text gets hazy. Okay, nonetheless, I will read it out for you. Any person in the service or the pay of the government or remunerated by the government fees. Okay, so that person will be considered as a public servant. So definition of public servant as defined under Section 2H of Prevention of Corruption Act covers only the non-constitutional bodies. In other words, I can say, right? It covers PM, it covers the members of parliament, but it does not cover judges explicitly. Okay, so it covers the public servants. Now the dilemma is whether the public servants, the term covers the Supreme Court judges and the High Court judges or not. Well, the Lokpal on one hand is saying that it covers the High Court judges, but it does not cover the Supreme Court judges. Why? It says that Supreme Court was primarily created by the Constitution of Independent India. Okay, it was creation of Constitution. So these judges are constitutional authorities, whereas High Court judges are created by the British Time Act, the acts passed by the British Parliament for India, Government of India Act primarily. Okay, so it says that these courts were created by the Government of India Act, so they are statutory bodies, even though later on the Constitution added Article 214, Article 217. Well, the editorial says that no doubt that Lokpal seems to be confused and Lokpal seems to be wrong over here. Nonetheless, the larger issue that it raises is, who are the judges accountable to? To themselves. Well, India, as we say, is the only country where judges are appointing themselves. Now, without the consent of the judges, judges cannot even be prosecuted for the charges of corruption, no matter how serious they are. This time, to give you the context of the charges are so serious that a judge, additional judge of a high court, has been found to be lobbying or interfering with the proceedings of the additional district court, influencing the additional district judge to give a judgment in favor of a private company. Now, when these charges have come, High Court judges cannot be prosecuted by Lokpal. We can say that as per the theory, as per section 14 of Lokpal, which describes the jurisdiction of the Lokpal, judges of High Court are not covered under the jurisdiction of the Lokpal. Agreed, sir. No problem in that. We don't have any problem in the interpretation of the law. But what about the justice for judges? Okay, so law will take its own course for rest of the people, be it Salman Khan, Ranveer Allahabadia, any ministers, any parliamentarians, but law will never take its own course when it comes to the guardians of the law themselves. I told you yesterday that none of the judge has ever been removed, okay, impeached, even though allegations have been quite serious. If I may tell you a funny story here, Justice K.G. Balakrishnan, the CJI of India in 2009-10, okay, so he said he has only a Centro car and a ring that he is wearing, okay, property worth 2,350,000 only. Once he filed an affidavit about his assets and the assets of his spouse, his wife, but later on it was found that his son is a billionaire and he became the billionaire after he became the judge of the Supreme Court. Right? This is the problem. Corruption is there in the judiciary, but judiciary does not let us talk about it. Pendency of cases is there in the judiciary, we don't talk about it. Okay, the way the judges are appointed, we want to talk about it. We pass NJAC Act, National Judicial Appointments Commission Act also, but judiciary does not declare it to be valid under the Constitution. Are we ruled by judges? There is no doubt about it. You talk about UPSC case, you talk about the problem in the UPSC filing, filling up of the form, you talk about NEET exam, anything neat or unneat, anything neat or not so neat will land up in the court. But anything so dirty about the judges, corruption, uncle judges, Junior Chandrachud advocating in front of the uncles whose father at one point of time used to sit beside the same judges. Okay, so these type of phenomena are going on in the judiciary, but we can't talk about the transparency and accountability of our judges. right? So this is the problem here, which this issue of Lokpal has highlighted. Even though Lokpal may have exceeded its jurisdiction in saying that it has the jurisdiction, it has the command over entertaining the cases of corruption against the High Court judges by declaring them to be not constitutional authorities, non-constitutional authorities. Okay, well, let us go. You understood the phenomena. You understood the what is the problem here. Now we are going to talk about what the editorial says. Okay, in 1991, Lokpal says, when Lokpal says that the Supreme Court judges are not within its preserve, are not within its jurisdiction. Supreme Court judges are not under Lokpal. This is what Lokpal is saying, that they are not under Lokpal, right? But in 1991, K. Veeraswamy judgment. Please note down this judgment. K. Veeraswamy judgment. In this judgment, the Supreme Court itself declared that Supreme Court judges are public servants. Okay, so Supreme Court judges are public servants within the definition of Prevention of Corruption Act. This case was between the Union of India, Union government, and K.S. Veeraswamy. So K.S. Veeraswamy said that the judges are not under the Prevention of Corruption Act. Prevention of Corruption Act says that any public servant as defined under section 2H of this act is covered under the Prevention of Corruption Act. Okay, so the clarity was needed from the Supreme Court itself whether the public servants include judges. Okay, Supreme Court said yes. Supreme Court said yes. Section 2H includes judges. Okay, so when they are included in the definition of public servant, they are included in the definition of public servant over which Lokpal has jurisdiction. Okay, but on 2nd January, Lokpal itself says, no, Lokpal does not have the jurisdiction. When the matter came of the High Court judges, Lokpal says it has the jurisdiction. So this is the problem. Public servants, as per the 1991 judgment, they are covered. Okay, as we just saw. But Lokpal is saying Supreme Court judges are not covered, High Court judges are covered. This is the problem with the order of the Lokpal. This order came on Jan 27. This order came on Jan 2nd. Okay. What is the problem with the Supreme Court? Supreme Court says that constitutional judges, constitutional authorities are beyond the remit of a Lokpal, which is just a statutory body. Okay, how can a statutory body, a body merely created by an act of the parliament, investigate the constitutional bodies? But I am using the different colors. Corruption, the color of black money is black only. The color of bribe is black only. We call it as black money. Even though the colors of notes may change from purple to green, demonetization, orange color notes, etc., etc. Statutory body, constitutional body distinction just to exclude the judges from being investigated. Okay, so this is something dilemmatic. This is something confusing. Who is going to entertain the pleas? Supreme Court in this 1991 judgment, K. Veeraswamy judgment, had said that any complaint of investigation, any request for investigation, any complaint against judges of High Court shall not be entertained without Supreme Court's permission. Okay, and this is not wrong. Supreme Court, because many frivolous complaints are made against the judges. When a judge gives a negative order, an order against a party, that party starts filing the complaints. Okay, against that particular judge. Allegations are leveled. We agree, sir. No problem in that also. But permission of Supreme Court judge is to be given within the Lokpal Act. The permission is to be given within 4 weeks. Lokpal has given the time from 27 January till 4 weeks, whether it can entertain the complaint, whether the Supreme Court finds the charges of allegation against the High Court judge to be frivolous or genuine. Based upon that only, based upon the Supreme Court's permission only, Lokpal will be able to proceed ahead with the complaint of corruption against the additional High Court judge we are talking about. I hope you get the issue clearly, right? So this is the problem. Now, what is the way to punish judges in case of allegations? You would wonder, see what type of a lenient punishment is given. Okay, either the judge is asked to retire, take voluntary retirement himself, or he is not given any judicial work. In case he does not retire, impeachment proceeding would be started, which will take its own time because parliament is not in session. So it will take its time. So judge is not given any judicial work until the matter is decided, so that the parties, other parties, which are parties in the cases which will come up before the judge, are not at a discomfort, are not at a disadvantage. Okay, no judicial work is given. Okay, then finally removal by the parliament. This is the last resort. These are the three serious things. Okay, I mean, this is the starting process. First, he is requested to take voluntary retirement by Ministry of Law and Justice by the judges as an informal way. If he does not, then he is denied any judicial work. Thirdly, removal by the parliament. This motion for removal of the judge called impeachment is taken up, both for the removal of Supreme Court judges and the High Court judges. Mostly judges are transferred, judges of the High Court, if there are any allegations, they are just transferred from one High Court to another, as if transferring them will lead to change in their antaratma, change in their conscience, right? If you transfer some Guwahati High Court judge to Allahabad High Court, maybe he would have taken the bath in Sangam, he would get rid of all the dirt on his linen and then will become purified soul. That is what has happened. Okay, I'm just giving you the example so that you can understand what happens by just transferring a judge. Nothing. Will his conscience, or will he become more pure as a soul? No. Okay, so that is the problem. There is no authority to control the corruption in judiciary except judiciary itself. Okay, so that is the problem. But you talk about Ranveer Allahabadia, Salman Khan, Sanjay Dutt, corruption allegations against government, Manmohan Singh, coal scam, 2G scam, everything is going there. But what about Judge Sahab ka scam? This is the question that Janta, the people of India beg now, right? Coming to the other news article. Supreme Court judges last month, this is narrated here for your convenience. Section 14 of Lokpal you need to memorize. Section 2H of Prevention of Corruption Act defines public servants, you need to memorize. Those public servants are covered under Section 14, you need to memorize. Okay, definition of public servant as given in Section 2H of Prevention of Corruption Act needs to be memorized. Done. Now, this issue is taken care of. Who can be subject of a complaint? The Prime Minister. Lokpal Act of 2013 directly declares these authorities. Okay, Union Ministers, Prime Minister, Members of Parliament, Central Government officials in Group A, B, C, D. Because it is Lokpal, the Central Ombudsman, so all the central government functionaries, chairperson, member of UPSC, any organization, any NTPC, National Thermal Power Corporation, Coal India Limited, all these authorities or corporations created by the Act of Union Parliament, all their members, their employees are covered under the jurisdiction of the Lokpal, plus all the public servants as defined under Section 2H. That is why Section 2H of Prevention of Corruption Act plus Section 14 defines the jurisdiction of the Lokpal together. This is why I want you to memorize this. Now, moving further, I have enumerated this. Based upon this principle, Lokpal has referred to the complaint. Everything is narrated here. You can just go through it. I have explained you what are the ways in which we punish our judges. Okay, in cases of allegations. So as I told you, the removal process of judge is very, very longish, very tardy, that no judge has ever been removed. Despite so many cases, despite Transparency International saying that corruption in judiciary in India is rampant. Despite the, okay, what are the solutions to it? Let's talk about the solutions. NJC Act talks about only the appointment of judges. Okay, there has to be an investigating authority to investigate the cases of corruption against judges. Number one. The other solution could be the appointment of judges should happen in a transparent manner. We need to create All India Judicial Service so that the corruption that starts with the district judiciary level, the judges are chosen by the state PCS judicial exam. Corruption, the dirt starts there. We need to have a process as we have in UPSC. Okay, so as the way the civil servants are chosen, we can have an All India exam for choosing our judges also. Moving further. Now, the cooperative federalism in letter but not in spirit. What is happening here? That the new UGC guidelines say that a search cum selection panel, a search cum selection committee comprising of the governor, that is the chancellor of the state university, plus the UGC chairperson, plus the university syndicate. Syndicate includes the members of the trustees of the university. Okay, so state universities are those universities which are created under the act of the state. By an act of the state, okay, and then primarily act of state. Primarily funded by, majority of its funding also comes from the state. Okay, majority of the funding also comes from the state. So when state university is catering, is being taken care of by the state government insofar as funding expenditure is concerned, insofar as creating act is concerned, the legislative aspect and the financial aspect both are taken care of by the state government. Then why through UGC guidelines a central body, a central government body is trying to interfere in the academic arena of the state government? This is the contention of 4 states of South India, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Andhra Pradesh, these states included. Okay, so they are saying, Telangana also, they are saying that why are you trying to interfere by having the governor as the head of the selection panel? By way of protocol, governor is the senior most here, so governor, and there is no say given to the state government in this selection panel who will choose the vice chancellor of the university. Which university, sir? State university. University is of state. It is created by an act of the state legislative assembly. It is funded by the state government. Then why the nominee of the central government, that is the governor, will head the selection panel, will choose the vice chancellor who acts as the CEO of the university? Got the problem? Okay, so another major question raised in this act is UGC is an body created under the Act of the Parliament, UGC Act 1956, revised from time to time. Now UGC Act gives the power to the central government. Act does not say that this type of a thing can be done. When the act, the father cannot do something, how can the son, the act, the rules flowing from the act can do this thing? When the UGC Act does not permit the UGC to institutionalize such a mechanism of interference, of regulating the state universities, how come the rules created under, the rules promulgated under the Act can do this? Okay, delegated legislation means the rules created under the Act. Okay, everything cannot be put into the Act because otherwise it will become like a very long book, very thick book. So rules are changed from time to time. That is why we call it as subordinate legislation or delegated legislation. Legislation delegated to the executive. Okay, so what is the executive here? Ministry of Education. Union Ministry of Education is the executive here, to whom this power to change the rules within the act is given, so that rules can be adapted to the ground realities, to the changing needs of time from time to time. Every time you require a simple change in the act, you cannot run to the Union Parliament. You cannot bring about an amendment bill. So that is why every act of the Union, in general I'm explaining you, every act of the Union Parliament gives the rule making power to the concerned ministry. If you talk about the Protection of Environment Act, okay, Wildlife Protection Act, Air Control and Pollution Act, Control of Pollution Act, okay, Air Control and Prevention of Pollution Act. So these acts are under Ministry of Environment and Forest, to draw an analogy. Now, since these acts are under Ministry of Environment and Forest, any change insofar as protection of environment is concerned, level of arsenic in water or level of pollution in air is concerned, we want to do anything, should we now pass an amendment? When the parliament would meet after 6 months and 6 weeks, okay, then we will introduce a bill, then bill will be ratified, passed by both the houses, then it will be sent to the president. It will be a long chain of events. So why not give the miscellaneous powers of rule making to the concerned ministry? This rule making power is called legislation power being delegated to the ministry, delegated legislation. Okay, otherwise the primary legislation, act of parliament, is the role of parliament. But under that primary skeleton law, enacting a law, enacting the rules is the power given to the ministry, because ministry is more aware of how to make rules to suit the ground realities. Now, as I gave the example, this way act can be compared to the father. What father cannot do, father does not allow the UGC to prescribe the criteria for appointment of vice chancellors of the state universities. When the father, the act cannot do this, how can the rules, the chota bacha, the child under the act could be allowed to do this? Okay, so that means rules are ultra vires. In the language of constitution, rules are ultra vires the parent act. Got it? So this is the crux of the matter here. Now the states are going to form a delegation to go and meet the Union Minister of Education. They are going to petition the Union Minister of Education. Okay, just to try to convince them that this is a serious case of intrusion into the arena of the state governments, right? They say that states, UGC chairperson, first of all, he says that this is going to lead to a case of, this will lead to transparency in the matters of appointment of vice chancellor. This will lead to further improvement in the governance of state universities, etc. Okay, ambiguity will be removed. National education policy will be implemented the way the central government wants it. Uniformity of policy across the state universities will be there. Okay, but the states are not accepting this idea of centralization of the state universities, right? Leaderless they will become. Tamil Nadu had passed the bills. We had seen this issue in the first week of February, where Tamil Nadu Governor R.N. Ravi did not approve of the bills, okay, passed by the Tamil Nadu Assembly. Bills were reserved for the president's consideration ultimately. The case went to the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court said that how can you stop the state legislative assemblies bills for the period as long as 3 years, right? So that issue is same as this one, the regulation of state universities. Done. Now all these guidelines are there. Whatever we have understood in the text format, this is given so that you can memorize, can make notes out of it. I will from today onwards share the PPT with these annotations. Whatever issues we have seen, this will help you understand the issues, and you can draw these annotations, you can make the notes out of these annotations on your own. Better would be that you keep on making notes side by side. Okay, Prachi and others, right? Now moving further. Next issue, Qatar. The other day we saw that India is trying to engage the Gulf Cooperation Council countries, West Asia, the Middle East and North Africa region, MENA region, the Middle East overall, North Africa, Egypt. We recently saw Cyclone 3 exercise with Egypt. I'm doing the analysis of it for 2 minutes so that you get the context of it. Now, Qatar-India relationship is going to majorly depend upon the LNG supplies from Qatar to India. India is excessively increasing its composition of energy mix with LNG. We imported 6% of our overall LNG imports from Qatar. They are expected to reach 15%. Our total LNG imports will be taken to the 15% from Qatar. We will be importing 15% of LNG by 2030 from one single country named as Qatar. Why? We can import from US also. US has been insisting on India. In the recently held meeting between India and the US, Donald Trump insisted on India to buy US crude oil, to buy US based LNG. But because of the increased transportation cost, US is quite far away from India as compared to Qatar. And to increase its strategic importance, strategic relationship with Qatar, India wants to strengthen the relationship with these Gulf countries to the detriment of Pakistan, number one, and China, our beloved two partners, right? China's Belt and Road Initiative has got important links in Gulf region. Even though in India's G20 summit held in September 2023 in India, we tried to come up with another project, India Middle East Europe Economic Corridor. You all are aware of it, right? Where we had seen that a lot of links are there in these regions. Passing from this to this, what port is here in Israel? Please answer in the comment section. What is the name of the port that is there? And what is the name of the port that is a part of India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor in the Gulf region? Well, this was a small map question. Coming back to the overall issue, if we do not strengthen our ties with Saudi Arabia, UAE, Oman, Kuwait, and Qatar, then China will gain an edge above us. The way we have been encircled by China in our neighboring countries, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Chittagong port. Then we saw Myanmar, Sittwe port. Then in Maldives also, the deployment of Indian Army, Indian Navy helicopters have been Maldives from time to time. It says that India should withdraw all this military and naval shipments, etc. Okay, so Indian Navy should not be there. We have lost out to China. Now we are reclaiming that space in our neighborhood. We don't want this kind of a story to be repeated between India and China when it comes to an important and energy-rich region on which India is dependent for its oil and energy supplies, including LNG. That is why we are diversifying our energy basket towards Qatar, towards this region. And we have concluded the strategic partnership agreements with UAE, Saudi Arabia, okay, then Oman, then Kuwait, then Qatar. Got it? So you should, whenever a news clipping comes, you should see the broader picture. What is the broad picture? Ultimately, we want to conclude FTA with Gulf Cooperation Council. Well, a wholesale agreement of FTA with Gulf Cooperation Council may not be as easy. That is why we are following country to country approach. One by one, we will conclude the strategic partnership agreements, FTAs, ultimately leading us to sign the agreement FTA. This is the same approach that we followed on the Southeast Asian side with ASEAN countries. When Manmohan Singh was the Prime Minister, we signed FTA, CEPA with small countries, South Korea, Philippines, etc. And ultimately we concluded the FTA in services and then goods with ASEAN. Okay, yes, Haifa port is there. So you understood this point. This is how we are strengthening our ties. Now let me tell you about China. China is not behind. Saudi Arabia's company, you must have heard the name Saudi Aramco. Okay, Saudi Aramco has made huge investments in northeastern China. I mean, I'm writing it here. Multi-billion-dollar oil and gas refinery project. Because I told you, Saudi Arabia and this West Asian region is such that if you dig up one small hole, instead of getting water, you will get oil. That is why whatever little oil refineries are there, they are sitting over the oil reserves. Okay, so that is why they can't, these countries, even though they explore a lot of oil, but they can't refine the oil requirement of themselves. They import the refined petroleum products from India. And now that investment is going to take place in northeastern part of the relatively undeveloped part of China, alongside Mongolia. Getting it? In 2023, our Prime Minister went to Mongolia and we signed $1.1 billion investment project to invest in Mongolia's LNG project. It is near to that site that Saudi Aramco has invested in China to refine crude oil and gas refinery project, to set up this project. As if this was not enough, Qatar recently signed a $6 billion deal to build 18 LNG cargo ships. $6 billion deal with Chinese Shipbuilding Corporation. Okay, Chinese Shipping Corporation we call it. So China will basically develop these 18 LNG cargo ships at a price of $6 billion. So see the investment that is taking place between China and all these Gulf countries. That is why you see that the emirs of these countries, one after the other. Prime Minister is having a hectic schedule. So is Mr. Jaishankar. Oman Emir visited here. Okay. Then you see UAE Prince visited here. I mean the UAE head visited here. Then you see Qatar. Recently we concluded strategic partnership agreement. We are trying to enhance our engagement with this region before China fills in all the shoes available. Got it? So this is the engagement that we are trying to do. Why? You should remember China factor. While writing any answer, these two examples of Saudi Aramco investing in northeastern China, one example. Second, Qatar has signed a $6 billion to purchase ships from Chinese Shipping Corporation. But we in India are, I mean, China and West Asia relationship, countries between countries of West Asia and China, their relationship is bilateral kind of. Okay. So bidirectional. They are dependent on China. China is making FDI investments into this region. India, on the other hand, is more dependent on this region. This is the vulnerability. India is seeking investment from Qatari sovereign wealth fund, whereas China is investing in these countries. These countries are dependent on China for supplying the ships to these countries because they do not have shipbuilding capacities. They do not have oil refining capacities. Saudi Aramco, we want them to make investment in India's infrastructure. China, on the other hand, is investing in their infrastructure. Right? So, which relationship is more fragile? India's relationship is more fragile. These type of questions are being asked in the international relations. Discuss the India's engagement with West Asia. Do you think, okay, I will put this question on the Telegram. Do you think, let me just frame it because I'm speaking it extempore only. Do you think that India is more vulnerable to India's relationship with West Asia is fragile than West Asia's relationship with China? Or do you think that China-West Asia engagement is bidirectional, whereas India's West Asia engagement is unidirectional, where India is dependent on oil and energy supplies? Tomorrow, if something happens in the Arab world, if all these countries say that we are not going to supply oil and energy to India, but we will supply it to China, India's supply chain resilience is in the air. Getting my point? The important crude oil that we need for India to grow will not be available. But can they do the same to China? No, they cannot, except at their own peril, except at their own cost. Saudi Aramco making investment in China. Have they made such type of multi-billion-dollar project investment in India? No. Got it? Even though Saudi Aramco, these billboards are visible in India these days, but no big ticket projects have come to India as of now. Moving further, this issue is taken care of. Rest is all fact. 6% of energy supplies. In 2024, we imported $38 billion worth of, gas, LNG from this country. Okay. India's natural gas share in the, India aims to increase natural gas share in energy mix to 15% by 2030, up from 6%. Okay. So this is the problem. Now, 38% of India's LNG imports were from Qatar by volume. So we want to increase this to even more so that Qatar-India dependency is there. Qatar also depends upon Indian revenues, but that is not an easy goal because Qatar has got a ready-made partner. Many Chinese companies, many Chinese private companies have signed non-governmental deal with Qatari authorities for import of LNG into China. This is India's vulnerability. Got it? So everything is written here, just go through it. US as a competitor. US is a major competitor to Qatar in terms of Indian LNG market and is world's largest LNG exporter. So US has been trying to woo India, trying to attract India to import cheaper LNG. US has even offered that increase in the transportation cost because of higher distance between US and India will be borne by US. Okay, FOB cost, freight on board cost will be taken care of by US. But India wants to deepen the ties with the West Asian region for the reason China factor. Got it? Now moving further. RBI to infuse liquidity via $10 billion US dollar INR swap deal. Okay. Despite the rate cut, why this is happening, I'm telling you. Despite the rate cut, the recent repo rate cut by RBI, the problem is the Indian banks do not have sufficient liquidity. Okay, now what are we trying to do is we did a $500-600 million such swap agreement to buy the dollars, get them converted into rupees. Those rupees will be given to Indian banks. Those Indian banks can borrow money from RBI so that we can meet the domestic requirement of funds to increase our investment. Yet at the same time, this money will be payable to the US after 3 years. Okay, this will help RBI to arrest the depreciation in the value of rupee for at least short term. Even though India's borrowing will go up, but in the short term, the way we see every day 0.15 paisa rupee is declining, every day 0.27 paisa rupee decline, that will be arrested momentarily for the moment with this kind of a deal. Okay, so it has decided to infuse rupee liquidity for a greater duration. Greater duration means earlier agreement was for 6 months only. After those 6 months, RBI will withdraw those rupees and will have to pay back to US. Now this latest agreement of $10 billion is for 1, 2 and 3 years. I mean total 3 years. So we will have to pay that back after 3 years. The $10 billion that we will get converted into rupees, and those rupees will be given to the Indian banks. Okay, so this is there. The previous action, as you see, was $5.1 billion, but it was for just 6 months. So that was the problem, right? This was a small news though, I mean swap deal, but you should understand what will be the impact of it. Impact is important. The application of this knowledge is important. So I am very slowly reading it out for you. Analysts predict a short-term positive impact on the value of the rupee. Potentially pushing the US dollar INR exchange rate towards 86.30. Now it is hovering around 87, 88. We have to pay 87 point something rupees for every dollar. But after this deal, the money that will come into India, okay, with this, the rupees value will hover somewhere around 86.30 as it says. Okay, it can give a push to the market confidence and reduce exchange rate volatility, which is harmful for exporters and importers equally. Okay, if the now I ask you a question, if the value of rupee is falling, is it beneficial for the exporters or is it harmful for the exporters? Please answer this. If the value of rupee is falling. Now, another question, does India have any naval base in Oman? I forgot to ask that question on the map slide when we were discussing the West Asia India engagement. So is India having any naval base in Oman or any other base in the West Asian countries? Right. Third question, which is the country where China has its base in the Red Sea? Country's name starts with D. Okay, just figure that out. What are the countries in the Horn of Africa? Very small questions I'm asking you. Since many of you are new to the news analysis, gradually we will cover all the important areas of map. We'll study map gradually in these classes only, right? Now, the articles that we have discussed in the news today, what were the articles? Go through those articles in your M. Lakshmikant or any other polity book that you are referring to, right? So these things are there. Now, foreign currency swap, read this part. A party, that is in this case RBI, RBI borrows currency from a third party, US Fed Reserve, third party. Okay, RBI borrows currency dollar from US Fed Reserve while simultaneously lending that party another currency. So we have lent $10 billion worth of Indian rupees to to the RBI of USA, you can say. Okay, Fed Reserve is the Reserve Bank of USA. We have lent $10 billion worth of Indian rupees to US Fed Reserve, but we have, instantaneously we've got $10 billion. Those $10 billion will be immediately invested in or infused into the Indian economy. Indian economy will get the much needed money because Indian banks are not having enough cash. Even though the rate cut, repo rate, the rate of interest has been reduced, but there is not enough liquidity. We will get the liquidity, much needed liquidity, that too in the form of dollars that we need to pay our import bills with. We are importing crude oil, we need to pay in dollars. We don't have dollars. Now we will get dollars, but the money we have to pay after 3 years to the US. Got it? So this is a good thing for India, right? Even though it is a public debt. So this is there. So this was all in today's news analysis. I hope you guys were able to benefit out of it. Today, these days, we are getting a bit late due to some technical issue. We'll make sure that from Monday onwards, we meet on time. And tomorrow, we'll share all the important news articles that we've covered in the last 1 week. Okay. The last week also, I came up with a small video short on all the important news articles that we have dealt with in the last 1 week. So many of you who are joining me for the first time, they can cover the backlog of the DNA by watching videos or by referring to the PDF that is shared on the Telegram channel every day around 11 or 11:30. Okay, so we'll make sure that it is shared on time, but you can go through and revise these issues on Sundays. So tomorrow being a Sunday, task for you is cut out. You have to revise current affairs, revise the static subjects that you studied all through this week, plus your optional subject. That's all for now. If you are a total beginner, get hold of UPSC syllabus, revise it, read it, memorize it, at least for one of the papers on this Sunday. Either GS mains paper 2, 3, 4, 1, any paper that is of interest to you, right? So this was all in today's news analysis. Meet you again on Monday at around 8:15 a.m. We'll try to start it at 8:05, but if in case it gets delayed, please wait till 8:15. PDF will be shared in a short while from now on the Telegram channel. The link of the Telegram channel is given in the description box. And please, please, please answer all the questions that I have asked. 4 or 5 questions I have asked today. Please answer them as per your convenience. Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a good day and enjoy your weekend, guys. Thank you.